Welcome to Therabytes, where we bring you bite-sized episodes, each one a piece of the puzzle that helps to explain the therapy world, the research behind it all, and how it relates to families. Hello, my name is Dr. Dana Poole. I'm a physiotherapist and the clinical lead at the Healthy Strides Foundation. It is my privilege to be hosting this podcast, one that is directed for parents of children with neurodisabilities. We hope to be able to answer some of your questions through this format. But to navigate our way through these big questions, we have the one and only, the lovely Naresha co-hosting this podcast. Welcome, Naresha.
Thanks, Dana.
Yay. Hi.
How are you?
I am very well, thank you. We're back in the studio, so I'm always happy. It's another day, another conversation, hopefully.
Yes. I'm hoping to get some answers from you this morning.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Stand by. Let's go into that. But before we do, of course, I always love sharing some new research that's just recently been published. I feel like they're always really good for how we live our life.
Very true.
So this one I picked was probably relevant for a lot of us. Did you know that smartphone gaming induces dry eye symptoms and reduces blinking?
Yeah, I can imagine that would be true.
Right. So I'm just trying to understand this. And so what these researchers did, they're actually Australian school kids. There were 36 kids involved in the study, aged between 6 and 15.
Perfect.
Right. And this was published in the journal called Eye. Researchers found that symptoms of dry eye worsened after 1 hour of smartphone gaming. So it went from, so we normally blink 21 times per minute, and it went all the way down to 9 times per minute.
Wow.
Also, the interval between blinks extended from 2 seconds to just under 9 seconds within the first minute of gaming.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I was trying to understand the significance of this. And I guess it just keeps adding to more evidence about just being careful with devices.
Yeah, especially with children.
Yes, right.
Because theirs are still developing.
And then dry eyes and what that might mean for them. They'll be really itchy. And this really just compounds evidence we already know. So this is all for us who are looking at our phones. It's probably good for everyone. Yeah. So the research does currently indicate that prolonged screen viewing is linked to faster progression of nearsightedness. And that makes sense in children and adolescents, and probably adults. And additionally, the likelihood of experiencing eye fatigue and strain increases after more than 2 hours of smartphone use. So don't go watching your movies on your smartphone.
No.
And don't go gaming for too much. Just remember to blink.
Yeah, and you spend so much money on those big televisions that you put in your house. You need to watch them.
I know, we take our small phones and watch it on that and we stop blinking and so our eyes are all dry. So look, I thought that was a useful one. It's a good one for me to know. I think it relates to kids a lot, but we can probably all take some of that in today as well.
I think so. I mean, it's daily life, isn't it?
Yeah.
All we ever do is hold that phone in our palms. Yeah, not a good idea.
Now you just see me walk around with my phone and just blinking. Blink, 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 blink. My eyes ain't going dry.
Oh, no, never.
Well, hopefully that was useful. But what usefulness are you trying to get out of me today?
Well, I'm hoping you'll answer a question that come from the diagnosis to the treatment. So now I noticed my observation bringing my boy here that the first things that you guys do, both pre and post, is get him to do a whole bunch of exercises. And obviously I know that CP affects the muscle tone, his movement, his motor skills. That would have started from way back when. Yep. So what are you looking at?
Okay. So what we do at baseline and at follow-up or after the treatment is we do an assessment that's really standardized. It's called the Gross Motor Function Measure.
Okay.
Or the GMFM. And the gross motor function measure is valid for use in children with cerebral palsy. And it covers 5 different domains, including like sitting and rolling and crawling, standing, then running and jumping. So it's got 5 different domains. And you score it on a scale of 0 to 3. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3 for very specific movements. So one movement might be in sitting for 10 seconds, holding their head up. Is it a 0? They don't initiate doing it. 1, they initiate doing it. 2, it's partial completion. And then 3, they do it completely. Right. It's very objective and we cover all the different gross motor movements that a child would do up to the age of 5 in typical development.
Okay, that was my next question. Which age group do you actually start observing those movements?
So we like to do it really early on. Okay. So from about 2 years of age is where it's most valid. Okay. I do it before then, not necessarily for any other reason, but just to track to see where kids are at because it's an assessment. Yeah. Okay. So that way we can see what it is that they're doing, what hopefully is about to emerge and where they're possibly headed.
Okay.
So the measure, we can call it either, here we go, there's more numbers to add to it. There's the GMFM, so the gross motor function measure, 66, where there's 66 items that we use.
Okay.
We plug this all into an online kind of calculator, and it gives us percentiles.
Right.
So it tells us whether the child's performing at the 40th percentile of their gross motor function classification system, the GMFCS. So this tells us a whole lot about where they're tracking
All right.
and whether we can track improvement.
Okay.
And then there's GMFM 88. So there's 88 items that we score. So this means we might do it for children that don't necessarily just have cerebral palsy. They might have a different kind of neurodevelopmental disorder.
Right.
And we would track them over time based on, but compare them to themselves.
Right.
The 66 is where we compare it to a bigger group of children that have already been tested over the last few decades, and we get an idea of where they are from a percentile perspective. So it's a very important measure and one that can tell you where they're at and whether the treatment that they're getting is actually
working.
effective.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to, yep.
When you're looking at the graph, you want it to be increasing, or do you want it to look at, I mean, obviously we don't want to decrease, right?
Ideally not. So, okay, that brings up a lot of really interesting points. So when we graph where they are on this assessment compared to other children with cerebral palsy, so this it's important they're comparing to other children with cerebral palsy, right? They're graphed according to their curves based on the GMFCS. So should we go into what GMFCS is? Yeah. Okay, so GMFCS, so much easier to say that than the Gross Motor Function Classification System.
Yeah.
Now, this classification system was developed a good few decades ago now, and it's a way of which we can communicate to each other how a child is functioning.
All right. And I think I remember seeing a chart.
Yes,
and the
there
chart
is.
shows the different stages of what a cerebral palsy child may look like.
Yes. Yep.
Right. And it's clearly noted too with the description. Is that the one?
That's
you're talking about? Right.
That's right. And there's a picture. There's pictures as well that show you, but a very in-depth write-up of number 1. So GMFCS level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
So 1 and 2 means the child, in general, there's more detail to it, but in general, that means that they are functionally independently ambulant. So they can walk in the community and they might have some difficulty over uneven surfaces or going up and down stairs.
Right.
They may need a walking aid, but they are generally very physically able to functionally ambulate in the community.
All right.
All right. Now, 3, 4, and 5 means the children are more dependent on physical assistance and equipment or assistive technology throughout the day.
Okay.
And more so for your children who are GMS level 4 and 5 because they tend to have less head control and less trunk control. So they might need a bit more physical assistance or a bit more equipment to help them to get about in the community.
Okay.
Yep. So those are the curves. So that's how we describe a child. We might say, hey, this child functions within GMFCS level 3 or 2. And as soon as you say that, I already have a picture in my head and I go, okay, so this is how the child moves. Yeah. Otherwise, you'd be doing something like, so my child is, they walk really short distances, but then they use a walking frame when they want to go outside. And sometimes they use a wheelchair when they go out and about in the community. Yeah. Instead of you saying that, it's all captured and described as a GMFCS level, and that would be a GMFCS level 3, for example. Yeah.
Right.
Does that make sense about what the GMFCS is?
Yes. GMFCS is clear.
Yeah.
Can we go back to that GMFM?
Yeah, now how that relates.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So when obviously my little boy, he's a 3, a GMFCS 3.
Level 3, yep.
Right. So yes, he's dependent on the walker, the wheelchair, plus now some crutches. They always get measured how often?
Ideally, they should always be measured before and after a particular kind of intervention to see how well they work, how well they're going with it, to make those decisions like we spoke about last time. Yep. But, every year it's always really nice. If you're not doing any particular interventions, every year it's good to see where they are.
Okay.
Because within the GMFCS level curves, so basically a curve just means in the first 5 to 10 years, the children have this really steep incline on all these skills that they gain in the first 5 to 10 years. Yep. And each child within GMS level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they will get to the peak of their gross motor skills at different times. So children who are GMFCS level 1 and 2, they tend to get to their peak between 5 and 7. Right. Children GMFCS level 3, 4, and 5, they'll get to their peak between 5 and 10 years. So they might just need a little bit more time. Right. But within all of that, when they start to plateau in their skills, you can have different percentiles. So they can be the 10th percentile, 20th, 30th, 40th, 50th, 60th, all the way up to 90th percentile. Okay. Because there's a range. We're all different.
Right.
and your GMFM, your score on your GMFM tells you what percentile they are on the gross motor function classification system, or the GMFCS. Yeah, so let me put this into a bit of context. So if a child who has a GMFM score that gets them to the 50th percentile of GMFCS level 3, right, that means they're comfortably, you would be very confident to say they're GMFCS level 3.
Okay.
Now, if he's in the 50th percentile, but after the intervention he gets to the 75th percentile, then we're like, hey, he's making a gain more than the 50th percentile trajectory. He's now going to the 75th percentile. So we're like, hey, he's gotten better.
Right.
That's really good because these percentiles take into account natural changes and development that kids go through.
Okay.
So what you want to see is an improvement that goes beyond that percentile.
Yep, and that's where that measure shows us, the graph shows us where they've gone. Right. Okay.
So it's complex. It's a hard one without visuals, I know. I feel like I need a visual. But the main summary is the gross motor function classification system is a way to describe how children move.
Right.
You can't necessarily change your GMFCS level because over time the descriptions do change to describe what they do because children function within a percentile range from 10th to the 90th percentile within the GMFCS level. Okay. And it's your gross motor function measure, the GMFM. When you do that assessment, it tells you exactly where they're going. Yeah. And that tells you if you've got improvement or not. Yeah. So if they're not improving, maybe we should do some therapy, like get them back up to it, right? But if they're doing really well and they're in the 90th percentile, you go, hey, maybe we can ease off a bit. Okay. Maybe we don't need to do as much.
So that way we can save up on the funding.
Absolutely.
Right.
Really
so
helpful.
Well, I never thought of it that way, but now you've cleared that up. That's really interesting to know. This graph or these measurements obviously indicates the changes that they go through, and that's why it's constantly measured, is that right? Throughout their lifetime.
Well, we should always be evaluated. They do start to stabilize. So the curves literally, they go up quite steeply, they go up vertically, and then they start to plateau out. Okay. And now the GMFCS, there's also what we call the there's the expanded and revised version. So we call it the GMFCS E and R. I know we do this to you. But the E and R actually tells you what happens beyond a little bit older because these graphs only go to about 18.
All right.
So we know that it plateaus out, but by about sort of teenage years or sometimes a bit before, it does start to plateau out, but it does go down a little bit. Okay. Because we know that over time kids can lose some of their function because they're not as strong, they get contractures, the muscles are too tight. So you can graph them over a period of time. The graphs are only really accurate at the moment for pediatrics. It's not really extended for adults adequately enough. Right. But you can map them out over time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so most evidence-based therapies would actually do these measures then?
They should. Okay. Absolutely. If you don't do a measure like this, you never know whether your child's actually improved naturally. Because remember how I said in the GMFCS level curves, there's a steep increase and they often, a lot of kids keep increasing till about the age of 8 or 9. They do that naturally without therapy. Right. So if that's already increasing and you do therapy and you go, oh, we've done good, but actually they're all going to increase anyway. That's right. So you have to do the GMFM, plot their percentiles and see whether you've gone from the 25th to the 40th or the 40th to the 60th. Like you want to see that there's a change. Yeah. If it stays the same or if it goes down, then you have to have that conversation and go, well, what happened? Like, why aren't we improving? Can we look at something else?
That's a great indicator.
Yeah, definitely ask. Ask your therapist to do it. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes depending on the child's motivation to do so. And some children love doing it because it's pretty fun. You know, we have a nice little way of doing it now. We incorporate songs and games into it, right?
My boy really loves it. So he doesn't think of it as any strenuous exercise that he needs to do. He just naturally moves now. So
and
it's really
a great way to assess. Good question.
All right. I'm glad because now finally I've got it clear in my head because
that's good.
It's really hard. You're looking at the chart and then you're looking at the map. I mean, the graph. And it's like putting it together and understanding it. So today, thank you for making it clear for me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And for the families out there.
Yeah, and we'll pop this on our blog as well. If you head to our website, healthystridesfoundation.com, we will put the plots there for you, the different descriptions, and I'll give you an example of the percentiles too, because I think once you see them, you'll get what it means as well. And it's the first thing to do is just to ask. But remember, GMFCS level, it's just a classification. But within that is where we can assess using the GMFM, the actual measure, and we can plot for change.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds really good. Well, hope that was really useful to everyone, and we'll talk to you all again next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.